These thoughts come from our experience last Sunday. It was for me a very good day. There were many blessings last Sunday. It was a very encouraging day, mainly because some lessons I had been anxious about delivering were very well received. And I was greatly encouraged by that. And then we were encouraged by Paul and Andrea's visit here. You know, so many of you just had a great time visiting with them. And I know from the messages they sent back to me, they were so greatly encouraged by that. And we were too. It's that kind of fellowship even with somebody you just met. I remember Andrea saying she had something in common through a couple of people here, and she said, you know, it's really a small world, and we have all these connections. That's so encouraging. But it caused me to think about those people who yet need to be encouraged. And be hard to guess how great a percentage of people in the church that would include. Those who need encouragement. I'm starting from Job chapter 4 and verse 4. Job 4 and verse 4. Job, you know, has lost so much and suffered so much. A man accounted for his great faith. In Job 4 and verse 4, it is one of his friends, Eliphaz, who's speaking to him. It is the same friend, Eliphaz, who speaks so kindly to Job here, who a little bit later in the book will turn around and hostilely berate him for sins. But notice how this starts. Job 4 and verse 4. Your words have helped the tottering to stand, and you have strengthened feeble knees. Well, he's pointing to all the good that Job has accomplished by his words of encouragement in his life in the past. He's commending him as one who's often helped others. Feeble knees. Of course, he's not talking about knees, he's talking about the weak. And even those who had suffered so much less than Job has just lost, would be feeble and weakened. Some would fall altogether. And so it's a great reminder, though, of the need to encourage those who are weak. And in that way, we can make a big difference in people's lives. We can keep someone from falling. Perhaps our words are the very thing that would keep someone stable. The one thing that would keep someone from departing from the faith and from the church. Because, no surprise now, we live in a world that's just seems like has a slippery slope on every side, doesn't it? So much unsound counsel. I mean, let's just be honest about it. Satan's just looking for the opportunity to pull the rug from under us, isn't he? And so, the tottering and the feeble, it doesn't take much to cause someone who's already tottering to fall. Bryan's dog just about did it to me the other night. Ran up behind me in the living room, and even at my size, the 80-pound dog about took me down. You know, and sometimes life is like that. This thing that bulldozes you from the past is going to take you out. Well, what do we learn about? What can we learn from Job about these words? What we say is powerful. Of course, we must be careful how we say it, because people remember. That's really if you want a title for this tonight, Bryan, it's People Remember. They do. You know, the things that I have said to people in the past and needed to apologize for and did so, and people were gracious to forgive me, but once those words are aired, people remember. I know that many of us can remember things that our mom or our dad said when we were growing up, and those words stuck. I mean, they stick hard. That's why James tells us to be slow to speak. Because otherwise, we get ourselves into all trouble, all kinds of trouble. And again, once it's been aired, well, it's in a sense, well, people do remember. What I've heard this evening, a couple of you use the word encouraged. What's it mean? Build up. That's what Job's doing, just building up others by a kind word, careful words, the right word. I saw a quote. It said Mark Twain said, "I can live an entire week on one compliment." Does make a difference, doesn't it? Or you can suffer even longer than that off of one unjust criticism. People notice. See, Eliphaz noticed. Job was speaking to someone else, but he took notice of it. He saw the difference in that person's life. And so you always have to ask, it's what do our families, what do our loved ones hear us saying? Do they hear us complaining all the time? Or what about our conversations, even with brethren? Negative? Never content? I've often talked about it, the fact that people will tell bad news 10 times as much as they'll tell good news. And so if that's all that people are hearing, then when real trouble comes, health problems, financial problems, problems in the marriage, problem with the kids, you just name it, they're tottering. You see, our words, there's all those other good things we can do, isn't it? We can cook meals for someone. We can serve in all kinds of ways. But when it gets right down to it, what are people going to remember? The words and how they were said. If we're so often looking for the big way that we can serve, when the best way we could serve is how we speak, how we encourage one another. And so, when someone is tottering, what do they need to know? That they're not the only one who's ever faced this. I was working on a lesson from 1 Peter 2, and talking about the suffering that we'll endure. And he said, Peter tells the people, don't act like this is something strange that only happens to you. No, this happens to each of us, and you'll get through it. You can endure it. They need to be reminded that God remains on the throne and He's always there. But again, people remember how we minister to them in those times. Not always easy to know the right thing to say. And sometimes the right thing is to just listen. But still, be careful what we say. I alluded to this earlier. Isn't it ironic that Eliphaz starts out and he can't say enough good about the good that Job has done by these words of encouragement. And very shortly later, he's going to viciously turn against Job, isn't he? To point a very cruel and critical finger against him. To point out all the ways that Job must have sinned against God. You see, even what Eliphaz admired in others, he wasn't willing to do. And sometimes we need to be careful of that as well, don't we? Reminds me of Matthew 18 again, where the slave had been forgiven much and then wouldn't forgive one that didn't owe near as much. That's Eliphaz. Not so forgiving. And so we notice the good that kind words can do. And even when someone fails badly, we're not those who get to point the radar gun at them and list the charges. And so, really the difference is between what the father of the prodigal said and the brother of the prodigal said. If you wanted someone to come back and to be strong and to be solid and really be part of the family again, you speak like the father, not like the brother. And it makes all the difference. Let us think about, again, last Sunday we had such a good time visiting with this brother and sister that visited with us, but shouldn't we be just as careful with what we say to one another every Lord's Day? What would we say when we meet somebody that we know nothing about? Or what do we say, how do we speak to those who have been away for a long, long time? What do you say? People remember, don't they? People remember. There's great power and worth in a kind word well spoken, a word of encouragement. So easy sometimes not to get that right. But again, people remember. Let us be a people of encouragement.